I used to yacht quite a lot when I was younger. For me, yachting was always something of an adventure. And so my earliest experiences were sort of tended to be cruising with a yacht, and one of my sort of favourite memories of yachting back in those days, when I did it quite a lot, was crossing the Atlantic. And I remember then the experience of it, the experience of being for the first time really out on the ocean there with the surfing down big waves with a yacht was just an incredible experience. And anyway, so that I had some very, very fond memories of it. But anyway, how did I get into the business? Because I had this dream of sailing around the world, like so many people who are sort of a little bit adventurous and enjoy yachting. And so anyway, I was out in Taiwan to build a yacht for myself and my girlfriend, with the intention of then sailing off around the world. And anyway, it never happened, because we got down as far as Singapore, and someone made me effectively an offer I couldn't refuse for the yacht. It wasn't for sale, but he saw it, fell in love with it, and just, he was an American actually, strangely enough, and he did say, well, everyone's got his price, what's yours? And anyway, so we eventually sold the yacht with the idea we'd go back and build another one, which is what we did. So we went back and built another one, and the same thing happened. At the shipyard, we haven't even finished the yacht, but someone just made me an offer I couldn't refuse for it again. So that was the second time, and then we got the message that maybe we should try to actually make a bit of money so we could enjoy our cruising around the world with a bit more luxury. And so that's when we built a third one, sailed down to Singapore, and actually sold 2 more off the back of it. And that's when the penny dropped, and I thought, well, hang on a bit, this could be a business. So anyway, that was how I got started here. So it started first in Hong Kong. I took on the agency for one of the shipyards up in Taiwan, and got started in business. Literally down at the MD Marine Club next door, I turned up there with my yacht, and that was my home. And I lived on board the yacht and started the business from the yacht. Well, it's interesting. I mentioned it a bit earlier because, as I said, it goes back to the passion, I suppose, for the sea, which I used to have in abundance. And sailing offshore was the great thing. Once you cast off, because you're in a completely sort of separate environment there. You've got no real connection apart from the radio. And in those days, it was a kind of a long range, a long wave rather radio, and that was the only kind of communication you had with the mainland. You're on your own out there, self-reliant, and you've got to look after yourself. You've got to have all your own resources there to survive. But just being out there in the wide ocean, and as I mentioned, once you're out there with a big ocean swell and you're surfing along, and just knowing that you're this tiny dot in the middle of the ocean, but just the sensation of being out there was just such an incredible adventure. And that, for me, I suppose, was really what hooked me on yachting back in those days. And many other adventures and many other sort of stories, but I think that was really it. I remember that one occasion out there in the middle of the Atlantic when it suddenly sort of struck home. The wind got up a bit and the surf was up, and we were literally surfing down the fronts of quite big waves there in a 45-foot yacht, myself and a friend of mine, as we sailed over. And that was that was something you don't forget. Well, that was sailing over the Atlantic. Well, we were sailing around the world. That was my first attempt to go around the world.
Right.
And, unfortunately, we had a shipwreck, and which put an end to it. And that's another story. But
when are we talking about?
This was back in the early the early 70s. Yeah, the mid 70s.
Right.
Yeah, I'd been in the army. I left the army and started sort of traveling around, and yachts were the best way to get from point A to point B. I didn't sort of like getting aeroplanes and things like that, so
yeah.
I spent 10 years of my life sort of hitchhiking around on yachts and on foot and so on. And
was yachting part of your family history at all?
No, not at all. No. When I was at school, I had the opportunity to go boating. I was brought up in the south of England, so plenty of yachting down there. It's a long yachting tradition, so I had that behind me. But it was really when I think, well, I can give you a story, but it's just once when I was I ended up in a place called Hammamet in Tunisia, and was hoping to get to Malta to see a girlfriend of mine. And since I didn't get aeroplanes, I went down to the marina, and marina, just a long pontoon with a few yachts on it, on the off chance that someone there might be sailing across to Malta. And anyway, so the last yacht I tried, a Frenchman was tidying up and obviously preparing to go somewhere. And so I asked him, and he said, yes, I'm going there. You want a lift? I said, yes. So the deal done. So that was really, if you like, in fact, that guy became a very close friend of mine, the owner of that yacht. And it was with him that we ended up trying to sail around the world. So it's how things happen. That's a pure sort of chance encounter like that. But anyway, that was the kind of thing that I used to do with. And that's how I really got into serious yachting. Okay, I think if we're looking at trends, I mean, over how many years? If we go back, 30 years, 35 years, when I first started out here, I mean, first of all, relatively few yachts. Most of those that were here were either American-built, the sort of Hatteras, Bertram, this kind of thing, and some Taiwanese, locally built Choi Lees. Really, not a lot of activity. But anyway, gradually over the years. Mainly sort of European brands. I mean, Beneteau, we took on Beneteau after a couple of years. That was back in sort of 86. And because we could see an interest there in sailing, certainly among the expatriate community here through the yacht club, of course. And there was an interest in something a bit more high performance than your average sort of Taiwanese built yacht. But anyway, in terms of trends, I think what we've seen, which is more significant, looking sort of closer to now, to today, is how sailing has taken off. It used to be the preserve of mainly expatriate sailors, and I think what's really interesting is how it's been adopted by more and more Asians. And I just use the example of the China Cup. At the time when the China Cup started, that was about 13 years ago. The China Cup over in Shenzhen. In Daya Bay. At that time, I mean, I remember having a conversation with the CEO of Beneteau, and with him asking me, he was over here having a bit of a fact-finding tour, and he said, well, do you think that they're really going to take to boating out here? I mean, they don't really like the sun and the sea and so on. And I said, well, I don't really know. But we experimented with Beneteau in the China Cup just to see if it really takes off. And it did. It was amazing just how the Chinese did take to it. Now you can see that more and more Chinese sailors are sort of taking to the water, and that's important because it's not just the tycoon who buys a big yacht that's important for the market. It's the grassroots. It's the base of the pyramid, as I like to describe it, and that's what is really important for the long-term development of the business. Well, positive, I think, because there is now, despite all the restrictions we've discussed, and despite the lack of clear oversight, shall we say, of the industry and the development of it by government bodies, despite all this, there's such tremendous enthusiasm now developing. There's a kind of a groundswell of interest in yachting and yachting activities. And I think that's the main thing. And when we talk about the sailing, and that's important because that is the new generation of people who are going to buy yachts, get into serious yachting. They start off in dinghies and they work their way up because they have the passion for the sea. And I think what's important about this is to see this trend. And because I think if you look at yachting in the West, why is it so successful? It's because of that base of the pyramid, this grassroots development of yachting, because that's what really assures the future of the business, of the industry. And that's what we're seeing out here in Asia. I think that's really spreading to the point that you can say that there's enough momentum there to keep this going, despite all these sort of setbacks like we're having now with lockdown and so on. There's definitely that sort of pent-up demand for it. Well, I think it's at every level we're seeing that developing. I mentioned a bit earlier about People going out in smaller boats, speed boats, going out there. It used to be just water skiing, now it's wakeboarding and a variety of other activities. So that is getting people out on the water, and then of course a lot more people getting out and sailing. But anyway, as far as we're concerned, I think that these are all relevant because these are all sort of leading people into the yacht business. But in terms of interest, I think we're also seeing much more interest in going further afield. Among buyers, it used to be just a matter of going out for the day. Certainly if we're looking at the Hong Kong context, then going out for the day and just singing karaoke a bit and drinking a bit and so looking at your watch and going home again, and that was boating. Whereas I think that's changed a lot, and people are now, we've found more people sleeping on their boats now overnight, which was something unheard of until fairly recently. All of that's a very positive trend. People are using their boats more, appreciating what they can do with them. So that I think is very positive. And because they're going further afield, they start to then think more about the capabilities of their yachts. As it's not just a sort of a floating, let's say, place to go and have a bit of fun. It's something that you can actually use to get from A to B, just to explore another country maybe, go down to the Philippines, or in the case of someone in Singapore, drive up to Phuket or off to Tioman for the weekend. People are getting to see the full scope of what's possible with a yacht.
Yet.
Yeah, well, I think the obvious one is really Indonesia. With its 17,500 islands, and I have to say that I think that's probably the one place that I'd really love to go and explore. And there's a book that I read many years ago by someone called Lyle Watson, and he wrote a fascinating book there about about going off in a small leaky boat with some fishermen to go and explore some of the islands. And anyway, they had a bit of a shipwreck. He ended up on this island, and it was just fascinating to hear the history of that one little island there among the 17,500 islands in the archipelago, and how, because they're so separated, it's like there's no central government. There is a central government, but it doesn't have any impact. You have these completely isolated little communities there. And I think if you're at all as adventurous, I suppose, and certainly for me, sailing was about getting to a destination. The idea of all that adventure to enjoy out there in those islands, you could be lost in those islands and have a fascinating cruise, it's quite clear. So anyway, that I guess the Indonesian islands that is my sort of destination of choice, if you like. With the time, the right boat and good company, then that is exactly what I like to do. My yacht of choice, well, it would have to be a Beneteau, I guess, because we sell them, and we've been selling them very successfully for the last, 34, 35 years. No, they're very, very good, and I think the great thing about Beneteau is, as I discovered when I first started selling them, compared to like a custom yacht, like I was building boats in Taiwan, heavily built, and you have everything personalized just the way you want it, which is great. But if you're cruising on a yacht, you want to think about other things, like easy maintenance. And the thing about a Beneteau was, because of the way they're built, it was much simpler in terms of its construction and easier to maintain. So I would certainly, I think, choose a Beneteau with the knowledge I have now. And they have the Oceanis range, something around the 53-foot mark. They've got really beautiful yachts now, and they sail well, and a good cruising yacht, plenty of comfort on board, everything you need. And of course they're much more comfortable these days with well, even air conditioning, which I certainly didn't have in the yacht when I was sailing. You had a little fan, if you were lucky, a little fan that'd be whirring away over your head. That's the best you had in the tropics, but to keep you cool. But that's what I would probably get. Yeah, one of these little Oceanises from Beneteau.